We have people who live 2 miles down the road that have no idea this is tucked back in here.
A second faster than the track record. It was unbelievable.
Ford internally would call us a workhorse. Basically was they'd save like one of every fire suit from every year as best they could.
If I could get a third injector per port, we could make over 1,000.
We're here in Livonia, Michigan, and this is the Roush collection, which is basically a museum of all the Jack Roush racing related cars and race cars, street cars, all that stuff.
Part of the way we've chosen to arrange the museum is we're not fans of barriers that kind of obstruct the appreciation of the cars. It's hard to appreciate cars when they're roped off behind a chain link fence or a felt stanchion. Part of us not advertising is that we sort of find the people that walk through the doors kind of self-select at that point, and we have a lot less of the issues of people who might abuse the cars or walk up next to them with jeans or chains and scratch stuff. The people that walk through the door are typically the diehards who put in the work to actually find out that we're here. And
this one in particular is of interest to me.
Yeah.
JR17.
Yes. I believe it's the winningest Mark Martin chassis we have in here. I believe there's 4 wins on the chassis. I know he won with Watkins Glen twice with it.
Dad, what can you tell us about JR17?
Well, 89 we started converting over to front steer cars, and our first one was JR10. So 17 comes along, not that long after that. And the car probably replaced the car in 1990 at Watkins Glen. We totaled at the top of the S's. BB was turned sideways, parked at the top of the S's, and we didn't have a spotter over there. And I hit him and demolished the car. So that would have been about the right time that car emerged on the scene, would be after that. I know the car had been around a while, and before we got ready to go to the Glen in 1993, Steve and the guys put it on a big diet and put a rake body on it, put the new body spec on it that we had come up with. They cut a lot of the support, non-essential support tubing out of the car. When that car was on jack stands, the hood would not close properly. The hood pins would line up. It flexed that much. And we took it there to the Glen, and we were okay in practice, didn't know that we were blazing fast. And when we went out to qualify, and I came in, I ran a good lap, but I didn't have any idea, and it was like a second faster than the track record. It was unbelievable. And of course we won the race with it, and then we came back and we won in 94 from the pole, and in 95 from the pole with that car as well. We didn't run that car at Sonoma because we ran a straight up car. That car was offset for right-hand turns. Like all our other cars were offset for left-hand turns. That one was reverse offset to get as much right side weight as we could get in it at the time. And so we retired it in 96, and it was the ideal car to take to Suzuka when we went over there to run race in Suzuka. It was raining the first day on Saturday, practice and qualifying day, so we practiced in the rain. We sat on the pole in the rain. And then when I walked out of the hotel Sunday morning to walk down to the racetrack, it was bright sunshine. So we didn't have a clue. We'd never been there. We didn't have a clue what to do for a setup. But we led the race, and Mike Skinner and Larry McReynolds and the boys beat us out of the pits. And Mike was just fast enough that I couldn't pass him back, so we ran second. It still sits in Jack's museum, painted up like it was after the race in Suzuka.
Yeah, it came straight here, it's just from my understanding.
Still have an engine?
No, and I'm going to say probably 2/3 of these have engines, but it's probably not the engine it last ran with. typically by the point they're retired here, they're done.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of incentive for them to leave a racing engine in the car. It's like my favorite area of the NASCAR stock cars too. Like we kind of refer to this area as what I feel like is peak NASCAR. You know, like the big bold paint schemes, the
golden era,
kind of the end of the actual hand painted stuff.
But before the printed stuff, when it was like you had, you know, maybe 3 or maybe 4 primary colors, like 3 primary colors, accent color, high contrast, simple stuff that you could layer with vinyl. I don't like whenever they get into, I don't know if they have one here, but it's got all this stuff on it that obviously looks like it came out of a printer. It doesn't look the same from far away because there's too much going on. I mean, this was about as crazy as it got back then. That must have taken a long time to lay all that out, because all of these are a different layer. Some of these are printed and some of them are not. And then there's a base layer of paint underneath it that makes it even more complicated to line that all up.
And that's like the very like cutting edge of that kind of stuff. I mean, this was like a revolutionary thing back then.
To have vinyl was printed like that.
Yeah.
It almost looks like that print quality is better than what they have now. Like, people are just being cheap with their printers and not turning up the ink saturation to try to save a couple bucks on cartridges. Like,
that one's got an 89 front end and an 88 rear. It was kind of a car that was put together later on, probably 91-ish. The first couple seasons, there really wasn't the thought that, oh, we should probably save some of these until they started winning races, and they were like, oh, okay. But they put this car back together with the parts they had on hand at the time.
That was pretty common for the display car stuff back then.
Absolutely, yeah. It's kind of a funny story, but we had done a event here in Open House where we had decided to display a lot of the historical trophies that were not usually on display. And I was digging through a back storage room, and I stumbled upon this little tiny trophy in a box on the back wall in 3 different pieces, and come to find out it was the trophy from the first Roush Racing win at Rockingham in 1989.
Really?
Yeah. So,
like the trophy they handed to Mark, or the owner's trophy?
Just the one they handed to Mark, yeah.
I don't know when they started doing 2 of them.
Yeah, I think it was just one at that point in time.
Probably.
I'm pretty sure, yeah. But it had over the years evidently fallen apart, and I think somebody stuck it in a box and said, no, if we don't, nobody will notice. But I took it around the corner to a local trophy shop and said, you got any like the fittings that fit this? And they helped me source a few, and we put it back together. I love this generation too, because it's just what a wild, like, lawless place NASCAR was. And like, there's no safety equipment in there. It's just all like, there's no padding. The seats just like open.
I guess Mark always liked the nut cooler. The little mini hose that comes out of there.
Can you blame him?
No, I might want one in my car too.
The GT is actually a powertrain mule for the generation of Ford GTs that came out in 2005. Ford internally would call this a workhorse. That means it's probably in like the first 5 or so chassis that they build. It's the roughest stage, essentially. There's, you know, the body panels aren't really complete yet. A lot of the body contours are just tape lines. There's generic lights. There's no interior. The wing mirrors are probably stolen off like a Focus. The lower valence is cut aluminum. You know, everything is held together with screws and tape and pins.
Looks like prototype headlight buckets, just stuck over a sealed beam,
rectangular bulb. But it's amazing, you know, back up a little bit, it looks like it's built that way. You can get pretty crafty if you have some ingenuity.
But it's fun because you can see there's certain things that didn't make it. You know, the amber corner markers in the front didn't make it. Some of the body lines are not quite the same. There's a gurney bubble, which they never sold on the actual car.
How did Jack acquire this car from R&D?
My understanding is that we did most of the road testing on these cars, so...
Can you open the door?
Or
will it fall off?
I honestly don't know. It might not.
The prototype door latch, it was never meant to actually open.
There we go. Yeah. Of course, the production car's got the electric poppers, so...
That's like a New Edge Mustang gauge cluster.
Yeah.
That's fun.
They just took whatever they had. Like I said, I think the wing mirrors are probably off like a Focus. They're not the ones that ended up on the...
Random door handles.
But we have a pretty tight relationship with Ford Motor Company, so we can finagle deals like that sometimes.
This is really cool. So this was essentially the chassis configuration that they wanted to use, and they just kind of mocked up the rest of it.
Yeah, this would be something that was used for like fitment of body panels, the beginnings of engine and exhaust tuning, probably the earliest road testing they did.
It looks like it caught on fire once.
It did, yeah. I'm told there was some clearance issues initially. Initially, the exhaust was routed higher up, and it caught the rear deck on fire.
Imagine being early 2004 and you see this thing driving around town. They put the big guardrail bumper on there just to, just in case they got rear-ended out there, they wouldn't have to set back their development.
And again, sort of an example of the sort of work we do for the major OEMs in the Metro Detroit here. So we're doing things like road testing, suspension testing, exhaust tuning. We are probably the biggest name locally in what they call ORVT, on-road vehicle testing, where you take the cars out on public roads and get all the issues out before they make full production. I know our test drivers regularly get 10 million plus miles a year on local roads here.
The body on this thing is absolutely wild looking.
Skewed, yeah.
What is this?
Yeah.
That is. I mean, this bump here is probably because they had to put a template across this. But that template up there had nothing connected to it that said where this had to be. Or kind of independent measurements. I mean, some of this is just being dented, but honey, I just talked to Doug Richard on the phone when we were driving up here.
Oh, yeah.
He would have been Greg's crew chief during this era. And the configuration of these side skirts, how it's really short in the front and then it gets long. Something about the way that is helps get air out from under the car. I'm not exactly sure of the mechanisms that create that. Maybe something to do with the car being in yaw and the front wheel spinning. I don't know. But having that little kick down there helps facilitate that air removal. And then on the right side of the car, they would make the side skirt as low as they could to seal it off as much of the ground as possible for side force. Which this one's probably scraped from touching the track, and it is. They made it as low as they could go, and then some, kind of let it self-clear. The one that catches my eye is the Daytona 24 car that Mark Martin ran with Paul Newman.
The story Jack likes to tell on this one is that Newman at that point in his life was sort of famous for not doing autographs. So Jack, prior to the race, hands Newman $1,000 in cash with the intention of that for being to kind of slip it to the corner marshals if he goes off or wrecks and needs a push or a faster tow. And then when the race wraps up, Newman goes to hand the cash back to him because he didn't need it. And Jack says, no, your money's not good here. I only take check. And he got a $1,000 check from Paul Newman that he didn't cash and instead framed it and put it in his office.
That's funny. He did that just to get the signature.
The story Susan likes to tell is that part of what made this happen, Newman had been bugging Jack about potentially leasing a car for a couple of years at that point in time. And Roush Racing didn't run IMSA at all in '94. They were kind of focusing their efforts on Trans Am and then the new NASCAR teams. He got kind of random calls from Newman and his people for a couple of years. And somehow Newman got a hold of Jack's home phone number.
Yeah.
And she relates the story a couple times, 2 or 3 occasions at least. Jack had come home from a long day at work to find his wife Pauline on the phone with Paul Newman, having had an hour-plus long conversation waiting for Jack to get home. And
he was really that on it.
He relented, and they put the ride together for him as a one-off.
So Paul Newman was really dedicated to driving a Jack Roush car.
He really wanted to win the 24 was kind of his deal.
I think he could have bothered anybody. He's Paul Newman. And he waited a long time to talk to Jack.
But Roush Racing was just so dominant at that point. They had won every one of the 9 races they'd entered at that point. So Jack's logic and the logic in Ford Motorsports was that anything less than a class win is kind of a disappointment. So you really have to put the effort into it to make sure it's worth your spend on it.
What is Nobody's Fool?
Nobody's Fool is kind of a not very well-known movie that Newman was in back in 1994. think it had like Bruce Willis in it. It's not a great movie. I watched it like once just for out of curiosity's sake, but Newman plays kind of like an aging alcoholic handyman who's down on his luck and fights with his neighbors and son, and it was so it didn't make a strong impression on me, obviously, but when they needed sponsorship for when Newman wanted to run the 24 hours, Paramount Pictures decided they were going to put that on the car. Which is kind of funny because I think the movie had come out like 6 months before that. but
They're trying to boost DVD sales, or maybe they didn't have DVDs then.
It might have been VHS sales at that point, but and then actually kind of a cool thing, after they won that race, Newman actually came up here to Michigan and rented out a restaurant locally, catered dinner, and then did a showing with one of his movies with all the team members and employees.
Oh, that's really cool. So this little section here, are these all Daytona 24 cars, or? It's
a mixture of Trans Am and IMSA. So Trans Am Championship, that car has an absolutely ridiculous history on it. That's the car Tommy Kendall ran in '97 in Trans Am. So back then, Trans Am was a 13 race schedule. They won the first 11 races.
Wow.
And the championship, of course. So that's a winning streak that's probably not going to be beaten anytime soon. But Trans Am Championship, Daytona 24 win, Daytona 24 win, IMSA GTO Championship, Trans Am Championship. The Cougar has 2 Daytona 24 wins on it.
Who drove that?
A whole bunch of folks. So I think the last one was Mark Martin, Robbie Gordon, Calvin Fish, Dorsey Schrader, I think is one of them.
See, this video is probably going to have a lot of ADHD jumping around here because there's so much to look at. It's hard to just zone in on. I need to just pick apart one car.
We get that, and I always say this. I feel like car folks are a little ADHD to begin with, and it's like really hard to like guide you. Like we get group tours, and I'll be like, I'm going to talk for like 10, 15 minutes. I'll let you guys do your thing after that.
You kind of got to go absorb the scenery. Just get a feel for all what's in here, and then you can hone in on individual things. It's too
enticing to just run around and gotta see what all is here first.
This car I know is it's a DLC in one of the Forza games too. We actually had the Microsoft team come here and scan the car for that.
Cougar, that's just so interesting.
The tires are kind of the bane of my existence right now. We're working on those. A lot of these cars in the late 80s and early 90s ran 17-inch wheels. And in most cases, they haven't made those tires in 25 years. So we're finding ourselves, all the vintage racing guys used them up, and now we're probably going to have to put the 18s on there and find a compatible tire size.
What is that?
Air jack.
Oh. That is a feature from a world that is not mine. I've never observed a car that had one of those.
Yeah.
So what do you guys do here as far as maintenance or tinkering on these things?
We have a restoration shop in the back where we do pretty much all of our own maintenance work and restoration work in-house. Building across the street is a paint booth. We got a graphic studio a couple miles down the road. So generally speaking, we can do 95+% of the work ourselves. And if not, we have people locally we can rely on for that.
Is there anything going on in the restoration shop right now?
Yeah, we got one of the little Pro Stock cars back there.
Yeah.
As well as a enclosed car hauler that Jack had back in the late 70s that we're working on putting back together. And then Jack's daughter, Susan McClenaghan Roush, she drag races in NMRA and NMCA, so she's got her race car that she maintains out of that shop as well. And then some of Jack's personal cars and stuff like that too. The real honest truth is that not a lot of these run as they sit. So there's not a lot of maintenance, and especially the vintage race cars. You guys are probably well aware this stuff is like functionally obsolete in 3 or 4 years on average. So for us keeping all these running is just not a reasonable.
You kind of have to mothball them.
Yes, yeah. And even the stuff that's not race vehicles, I would say a lot of that is the same thing. Take all the fluids out, take the battery out so you don't get corrosion, and they're kind of left to sit. But a lot of them are that we could get them running in a short order if we had to. But there are probably 115 cars on display on any given day. We could probably start like a dozen of them. And that's stuff that we know Jack actually likes to drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we squirrel brain bounce over to the restoration shop?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I'm still trying to figure out how to build this video in my head, like the film stuff, so that it's editable later. And I just don't know how that's going to work here. So we might just abandon that whole plan. At least if we walk from here to there, we'll get a better feel for what's in here.
Yeah.
Because we have not ventured anywhere before the camera was turned on.
This Newman car here is actually the last chassis they built in the chassis shop.
Really?
Yeah. We were having some conversations in 21 when they were retiring this gen. Jack wanted a Busher car because we didn't have a Busher car in here yet. So we saved the Fastenal car down there. But Susan and I got together and kind of talked over and said, you know, we feel like when the shift to the next gen happened, perfect timing. When the shift to the next gen happened, there was about 190 people down at Roush Fenway who were building the chassis for the cars, and all those folks, unfortunately, were let go. And that had been a long, storied history, and we felt there was a need to kind of document their last build in the shop there.
In hindsight, down the road, this will be like this was the last real Cup car.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I don't know.
I'm not a huge fan of the current car. I like these better.
I like it. I think there's a lot of things there that were probably overdue, but I just hate that all those folks that worked for not just Roush Fenway, but all the teams for so long, were not there anymore. There's a lot of institutional knowledge and history that was lost with all those people, and that's kind of sad to me. This is the Jamie McMurray win from the Coke 600 or the Coke 400 at Daytona in 07. So this was the closest Cup Series finish up until a couple of months ago when Chris lost at Texas.
I wonder what that little chart is for on there. Oh, I bet that's a radio thing. Radio guide.
Because I think during this era, this is whenever the teams could talk, like so you could flip
Between
around and
each
talk
other,
directly to the drivers. Yeah.
It'd be fun if they brought that back.
Like seeing these the super speedway cars, some of them they just got hammer dents in there to keep the tires from rubbing, and throw some helicopter tape over it and call it good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny too. Folks love seeing these cars, as they came off the track. But the thing I always have to say too, from a conservation standpoint, it's a real challenge for us because it wasn't this dusty when it got here. This is sitting for the last 15 years collecting dust on top of all the Coca-Cola and Gatorade and champagne, and it eats the decals, it eats the paint. For reference sake, that Office Depot car down there is the exact same age and it looks immaculate. And but
what can you do? If you wiped it off, you'd wipe off the confetti. Yeah. So it's like you kind of has to sit like this until the confetti doesn't exist anymore. I
don't know that we'll ever get anything similar to this again. The Hawkeye system makes it a little bit difficult for them to preserve cars like this. In that sense, too, it's something that's kind of cool to have as a remnant of that era of NASCAR. I don't know. I feel like I've seen some folks get away with it, like with the 500 cars when they get shipped to the museum or something, but that's kind of it.
So I like with the on-off switch, they got them on rubber isolators like you'd have on an ignition box so that the switch would not fail from vibration.
The Burton car behind you there is the flag-to-flag leader from New Hampshire in 2000.
Oh, the race everybody hated.
Yeah.
This is what everybody says is the most boring race in NASCAR history.
For everyone except Jeff Burton.
Everybody except Jeff Burton, yeah. People love to see dominance, apparently except when he does it. Then it's boring. I think that was when they tried to use a restrictor plate at New Hampshire after aftermath of all the stuck throttle crashes, and they figured out that this restrictor plate was not the thing to do for that.
Foot fan.
The Edwards car, I believe, is 3 wins from his championship season in the Busch Series. I've also got a car that Greg clinched the Busch Series championship with. Okay, so those cars usually get saved. The white truck is Carl's first Truck Series win. This is the final Truck Series win with Colin Braun at Michigan back in 09.
I would have been there for that race.
Yeah. We have one of the trucks they used for the Driver X series on Discovery Channel back in, I believe, 2005 or 6. As well as another truck from Kurt Busch's rookie season in the Truck Series. I love the airbrush details on this one too, and the painting. Just like it's on the side here, like
yeah,
it's just something you're never gonna see again.
What a shame.
I think this is one of those
combinations that a lot of people forget or never realized actually happened was Kurt Busch in the 99 X-Side truck. It's kind of like wait, really? That happened?
But he won Rookie of the Year that year, and it was really his performance that kind of vaulted him straight into the Cup Series. That was back for those couple of years that the Truck Series was based out of Michigan too. The truck teams were.
Where was that shop at?
Up around the corner from us, and our building 6 is our main office area.
Huh.
Yeah.
Now is that a dummy cowl panel, and does the engine pull air from those ducts up there? Because no trucks did that for a while.
I think so, yeah.
Or is that just blocked off because this was moved to be a show truck or something? Can we open the hood?
Yeah.
I want to see what
question. I don't want to lie.
What's going on in there?
Oh, come on. Ooh, we got struts. That's fun. They don't really work, but
out of gas.
Yeah, there is no. I don't know. I can't tell if it would have been raced like that. I guess the air cleaner's kind of too far back to have any type of direct ramp to the cowl there. I just like looking at the details on these things. Like, how do they do the throttle linkage? How many return springs do they have? Or this distributor has an optical pickup and not a magnetic one, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
It should have a little test light thing on the bottom, if it is.
Yeah, these extra ducts probably had hoses that went to,
I'm gonna guess, yeah,
up there. Which I think that was cool whenever they did that, because it kind of gave it a little bit more of a, street type vibe to it.
Hey, why isn't that carb spacer welded on?
It may be the case, like a lot of the cars in here, that it's not an engine that they actually ran with.
I was making a joke.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you know, you know.
Yeah.
Or maybe they realized that was kind of a stupid rule and they undid that. But I don't know. It's not enough for me to say. I just imagine the alternate reality where Mark Martin's initial retirement plan follows through and he runs a truck full time. What type of timeline would that have happened? How many young drivers' careers would have been destroyed from their success being taken from them by Mark winning every week in a truck like this?
Yeah.
We'll never know.
This one is actually Mark's final win for the team too. I believe at Texas in 07.
Oh well. Yeah, these things are just the Truck Series in 2005. That was my favorite thing. That was just a special era.
Oh, Matt Martin asked that I show you this one too. This is
the one from the commercial.
Is a Sammy Kershaw video, Anywhere But Here.
Oh.
If you pull it up on Google, it's in the music video. But it was a truck that Roush Industries actually built as kind of a promotional tool. It would do things like appearances at Valvoline oil change shops or trackside events where Mark would be signing autographs.
Well, what are this prototype looking thing up here?
So that big silver thing up there is a Cunningham C7. So Cunningham was originally founded back in the 1950s. Briggswift Cunningham II was kind of a wealthy guy out of, I believe, Rhode Island, who was kind of a chemical magnate, if I remember correctly, and built his own cars as kind of a hobby. They tend to be a little like two-seater, kind of British styled, like a Cobra or a Triumph. Some convertibles, some coupes. there's kind of that mythology within the Chrysler community of Cunningham. Fast forward to like 1998, Bob Lutz, who a lot of folks know, worked for everybody in the industry, but back then he was the head of product development at Chrysler, and he had the idea they could kind of try and revive Cunningham as this kind of weird offshoot sister brand. He founded a company called Cunningham Racing with one of Cunningham's sons and some other industry buddies. They called it Cunningham Racing because the eventual goal is to go back to Le Mans with a race car. But in order to fund that effort, to build up some capital, they wanted to build a road car. But this model, and it's just a model, there's no drivetrain, there's no interior, there's no even a chassis. It's made out of dimensional lumber with a composite shell on top of it.
Why is it here?
We made it.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
Yeah. It's an example of sort of the composite work that the company was doing 25 years ago. Of course, our capabilities have only amplified and increased ever since. The Indigo here is sort of famous. This was like a bonus car in I think Need for Speed 2 back in the late 90s. If you beat the game, you got this as kind of like the secret car.
But like I remember that, some kind of weird fever dream from childhood.
Yeah, but it was a show car. It was back when Ford was an engine supplier for IRL, and the basic idea was they wanted a car that took the spirit and the feel of an Indy race car, but was large enough to stick a V12 into, and gave them kind of a venue to show off all their composite technologies. Yeah, 5.9 liter Duratec V12. They essentially took two of the V6s and smashed them together.
And that's a functional engine that is actually in this car?
Yes. Yeah, there were two of these built. This is the functional one, and then there was a non-functional one that was also sold, and then that was wrecked. So this is actually the only one that survives.
Wow. I didn't know that engine existed. That's pretty cool. Now I'm going to have to go on YouTube and look up what that sounds like.
There is a video of Jack driving this car probably in like 1998 or so.
Are there any other artifacts in here that are not cars that are cool to look at?
Oh, yeah. Let's go look at fire suits.
Oh, yeah. I want to have a building like this someday. Except this part up here would be where my office is.
Yeah.
The gym is something that would be there too. Oh, it's nice and cold in here.
Yeah.
Wow, this is neat.
So for a long time, the goal basically was they'd save like one of every fire suit from every year as best they could. You got everything from old Jeff Burton suits. Yeah.
No way. That is awesome.
Another Mark. Kurt Busch.
Jeez.
So some crew fire suits. Chad Little.
Didn't see any Johnny Benson, Ted Musgrave, or Chad Little cars out there.
We do have a Chad Little car. I think it's actually down at RFK right now.
Oh.
We have a 98 T-Bird. It's actually one of the last T-Birds they built that ran the Speedway races in 98.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
They were the last team. They were using the Thunderbird when everybody else switched.
Yeah. And then we started getting the road racing. So
The Folgers one. I don't have enough hands to look at stuff. Bruce Jenner.
Yeah. Jenner actually won a Trans Am race driving for Jack in the 80s.
There were rumors that Bruce Jenner was going to go drive for Dyegard after Darrell Waltrip.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, plus Ludwig.
Yeah, that's what is that, like the multiverse as a timeline split?
Yeah, I cut one of Matt Kenseth's old.
Is there a Paul Newman one in here?
We do not have any of Paul's. I think he actually kept his, or he brought his with him when he. And then a lot of these are like crew shirts over here. In a lot of cases, they're actually Jack's personal ones. There's all sorts of old Roush racing stuff. Let's see if I can find one that's got Jack's name on it. AmeriCorps mid-80s Trans Am racing.
There's be so many people who collect these things. They're just absolutely foaming right now.
This one here, this is a CarCraft Magazine All-Star Drag Racing Team jacket.
That is
So,
awesome.
CarCraft Magazine back in the 70s, they had a program they put out called the All-Star Drag Racing Team. And essentially what happened was every August, I think, in their August issue, they would send out a ballot, and the readers got to fill it out and send it back in. You'd vote for, like, best pro stock driver, best top fuel driver, best crew chief, best engine builder. And whoever won that, you got a whole prize package. So you got jackets and a little Honda pit bike and toolboxes and bragging rights.
These are what? Oh, they kept old shirts too.
Yeah.
This
That's
is freaking.
sweet.
Yeah, this is cool.
We sell some of the stuff like that too. With my coworkers have discovered. So, like I said, we have like the other mezzanine over there where they save like a whole bunch of like sample, and a lot of the time it was they'd save 1 or 2, which is great. Sometimes they'd save 5 or 10, and we don't need 5 or 10 of everything. So we've started selling off some of that in the gift shop down there. We do have a whole jack room back there too. This is kind of funny. So there's a.
Wow, this is wild. Okay, it keeps going.
Yeah, so these are a lot of, and then we have
That's the jack hat.
some of the iconic hats. The funny thing is there's not like one hat. Like he actually has such 2 of them in the same box. But he has a couple different styles that he kind of rotates throughout the year and depending on his mood.
I wouldn't have even known. It's just like he's just wearing a hat, and that's good enough for me.
There's straw ones in the summer, and then there's a couple of different felt ones he uses and when it gets colder out. But it's really funny too because his office is in a building up around the corner, and I helped him move into his new office a few years ago.
Oh, the Winn-Dixie.
Yeah, crew pants.
Cool.
But there was just like a stack of these, like 8 high.
Yeah.
At one point, he just stockpiled them and figured that would set him up for life, pretty much.
Do you have any of them?
A few here. I mean, he still wears them pretty much every day too.
What if everybody showed up to work one day wearing a hat?
It's a cougar.
Yeah, those are both Susan's. She's the big cougar fan. The black one is her college graduation gift.
We noticed that we crossed Schoolcraft Road on the way over here, and that's the street where the Gap and Roush shop was, wasn't
Correct, yeah. And they were actually there prior to I-96 being there too. So like,
Really?
Yeah.
What, did they dig a hole for that?
Pretty much, yeah.
I wondered
So
how
they just
that
a
how
big
it
old trench.
worked to be submerged like that.
Jack has told me before they opened 96, there was actually a day where they invited everybody locally to go take their kids down there on bicycles. So like
That's really cool.
I've also seen some stories in like a Hot Rod article where apparently Jack was taking like Trans Am cars and stuff out on
Before they had it
customer cars
open.
out before they had it open. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Do
Late,
you ever get
late
to,
at night? Yeah.
Do you ever get to go on the test track at the transmission place? Does he ever do anything there?
Not really. No. Yeah. To be quite honest, Ford doesn't use that very often either.
What a shame. It's perfectly good.
Yeah.
Oval with bank turns.
So yeah, we got the Mustang too. Got a super stock 69 Mustang convertible that Jack actually drove. We call this the Mustang room for obvious reasons. A lot of these late model like Roush Performance Mustangs too were Jack's personal rides. So Roush Performance is building him a new car every other year for a long time. And that sort of became the car that got towed around behind the motor coach when he's at the track.
So what's the deal with the Pontiac?
That is a one-off job for SEMA. There was a couple of years, I think 2005 and 2006, where they were attempting to come up with some non-Ford vehicles to modify and then show off at SEMA.
Why? Were they just trying to diversify, or was Ford getting slow? Or?
No, it was just a show they could do more than just Mustangs, basically. Yeah. We had a Viper at one point, too.
Is that a factory color?
I don't believe so.
It's nice. Metallic yellow.
Yeah.
I saw that banner on the wall, and I thought, that's strange. I've never seen that.
Of course, when people hear the name Roush, too, they tend to think Ford. But, And Ford is our biggest customer by a pretty good margin. The non-public facing stuff, the testing, the prototyping, the development, the manufacturing work we do work for everyone. So that's Stellantis, GM, Hyundai, Toyota, Chinese companies you've never heard of before, companies in the aerospace industry. Bell Helicopter is a big customer. We have an entertainment division that does ride vehicles for theme parks. So we work for all the major theme parks too, and yeah.
So what's with the airplane parts on the wall?
So the air cam up there is the one from the first plane crash back in 2002. That was the one that crashed into the pond down in Alabama. Most folks probably know that story, but it happened to be Jack's 60th birthday. He was down in Alabama for the race weekend at Talladega, and he'd gone out to the local airport on Saturday to meet a friend for lunch who had flown in to see him. And it was actually not his plane at the time. His buddy had recently bought the plane, and he'd, I guess Jack's been bugging him the whole lunch with questions about the plane. And the guy says something to the effect of, Jack, if you're so interested in it, why don't you just take it out for a little test flight? It'd be my birthday gift to you. And off he goes, and as Jack tells the story, he saw a little lake in the distance, and there were some power lines kind of adjacent to the shore, so he figured, seeing that, he was safe to come and kind of buzz the lake about 40, 50 feet off the water. But it ended up, there was another set of power lines that ran straight across the lake, and he ended up snagging those with the landing gear. And that kind of stops the plane in midair, like you're landing on an aircraft carrier, basically. Wow. And then the coincidences there just start getting weird. So the first fortunate thing that happens to him is that he smacks his face in the controls of the plane and knocks himself out. If you're conscious when you go underwater, you aspirate water, you breathe, and you drown in the space of probably 2-3 minutes. Best guess is he's under for maybe 5 or 10.
That long?
Yeah. His saving grace, though, was that there was a gentleman who was down visiting his brother who had a house in the lake. His name was Larry Hicks. He was a retired Marine. He actually had served in both Korea and Vietnam. And in Vietnam, he'd actually been part of a helicopter team that had received training on how to rescue pilots that crash landed. And that was kind of his job there. And he brought his boat down to go out fishing on the lake. And his brother and him were in the backyard having lunch. And they saw the crash happen. The boat is tied up out at the dock behind the house. So they both run out, jump in it, go out probably 100, 150 feet. He has to dive down probably 20 feet or so to get Jack. He does it once and gets him unhooked, and he has to come back up for air and goes back down again to actually pull him out, and brings him up and flops him up on top of one of the wings, which is floating on top of the lake at that point. Performs CPR because he's totally out at that point, and kind of brings him back from the brink. But there was about a 2-3 day stretch there when Jack was in a coma, and it wasn't entirely clear that he was going to survive.
That is insane.
Yeah, he broke
underwater for 10 minutes?
Yeah.
I didn't know that was...
He broke a leg, he broke an arm, he cracked a vertebrae, he had a pretty serious concussion. The recovery on that was a lengthy one, almost a year, I think, before he was really fully back into it. But
what made him want to keep the pieces and hang them up in here?
Yeah, just a reminder how fortunate you are. Yeah, you get a second chance at life, you gotta take it. That, and once you buy it, you kind of got to do something with it.
Oh, because it was his friend's plane and he crashed it?
Yeah.
What is this mechanism here?
This is a thing developed by Ford. They refer to it as a bridge. It's a tool to measure in 3 dimensions that they use for clay modeling. The buildings you guys saw across the street are actually a contract design studio. So there's 4 studio bays, and then large shipping and receiving area, foam studio, clay studio. We do a lot of different contract work for different companies.
So would they take different pieces that would slide in here that would have numbers on them, and they would push them out till they contacted something and take a mark and then move this one dot and do it again? So you're plotting coordinates in a way?
My understanding is that that's not really how things work anymore. This was sort of like the guys across the street were like, we don't really want this or need this anymore. Do you guys want it? I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that's really cool. This is an analog 3D scanner.
Yeah. This is a full-scale clay they used to develop a couple generations of Roush Mustangs.
So these pieces of equipment like this is the kind of stuff that I think is cool, because it's exactly like you said.
Yeah.
Guys would just be like, well, we don't need this anymore. And then they would throw it away.
Yeah.
And then however many years from now, people like us come in here and think, how did they make clay models that were symmetrical? I've always wondered that.
Yeah.
You can make one side of it and you're like, this is great. Do you park it against a mirror and just pretend the other half is there?
Sometimes they do. Yeah. I've definitely seen models like that where they use that, or you can do two different halves and you'll put a mirror down the middle and you can kind of compare back and forth. But yeah, clay modeling is not, I mean, it exists, but it's not really done in that sense anymore. There's a lot of kind of CNC type machines that will do the kind of the shaping, and then the fine details are by hand oftentimes. But
what are these engines for?
It's a mishmash of stuff. There's some that were in great race cars. This is out of a IMSA and Trans Am car. Some are just display engines they use for like trade shows.
Wally Bieber, what's he doing these days? January 17th, 1996. I wasn't born yet. I was in the oven.
Jack, by fortune of our connection to Ford, is pretty good at managing to squirrel away a lot of stuff that might not otherwise not make it out to the general public.
Got about 25 feet in here and had to come back, so we'll keep going deeper. Okay, I see something else I want to look at. More engines over here. That looks like a C3. Display engine of some type. It's got clear coat over the aluminum so it doesn't get the barnacles on it. For those people who want to learn more about the lineage of Ford engines in NASCAR, we have a whole video dedicated to that we did at the Roush Museum in Concord, the race shop, because they had them all on a stand there.
I know, that's a really cool display they got.
Which I think in there they had pieces of that plane in a small display.
Probably a couple,
also.
yeah. I think they have the
glass display case.
yeah, as well as some of the other one. Yeah. We share with them, so they their displays kind of have to change with the seasons and the sponsors. So, and we have a lot bigger inventory than they do, so we do an exchange probably roughly once a year to kind of make sure they're staying relevant and they've got interesting stuff in there for people to see.
This is the mothership.
Yeah.
Now this is interesting. Objective to determine the feasibility of making production level Ford 4.6 liter modular V8 hardware into race ready hardware. This is interesting because I've wondered about that, and even I think somebody said in the comments of the Ed Pink video we did with the 427 camera that, you know, whoever designed this thing must have been thinking of that engine and kind of adapted it. But they're pretty anemic when they're in a street vehicle, but there's got to be so much potential there. Yeah. And I guess this was the experiment to see if it did. Did it have potential? Or is there a reason I've never seen this before?
I'm honestly not 100% sure on that one.
Well, that's okay.
Yeah.
It's better to admit when you don't know something than to make up an answer that's wrong.
Absolutely.
Who made 600 horsepower at 8,200 RPM? So I think that'd be pretty fun.
This is one of those things too where, like, I've been here for 11 years. That's been here for a lot longer, and there's so much stuff that we have that I don't really know exactly where it came from, but we try and pull it all back together and collectively tell the story of who Jack Roush is and where this company came from. Hey there.
Sorry about that.
It's all right. So this is Susan Roush McClanagan. She's
nice to meet you.
My boss, our curator, Jack's daughter.
Hi.
We were just about to head back to the shop if you want to follow us. Or
Okay.
Yeah, we'd like to hear about your drag cars and stuff.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Let me set my stuff down,
Yeah.
and I'll be right back.
Sure.
So which one of these cars in here are yours, or your favorite ones that you raced with?
Oh, in this room here. Well, I haven't. Well, I take that back. I have raced the little silver 2003 Mustang. That was my first drag car. So it's we started racing in 2006. I don't know if you're familiar with the NMRA and NMCA series, but every year they do a Super Bowl shootout. And I won my class for the regular racing. So I had a class win and I was in the shootout. and I won my match in the shootout in 2009 at Juliet.
How did you get into wanting to drag race?
Well, actually, my husband and I had been racing in the Great American Race, or the Great Race, which is a vintage car time, speed, distance cross-country rally. We did that for about 10 years. So that was, I was the navigator, so I didn't actually drive, but I, was the one telling.
Like the co-pilot.
I told my husband what to do. So that was a wonderful experience. But in the fall of 2005, my dad had the track here at Milan rented, and we took some of the Roush Performance Products Mustangs there. And so he gives me a call and says, hey, we've got the track, you want to come check it out? I'd never been down a drag strip before. I made several passes in 3 different cars, and I thought, I can do this. So in 2006, we started the full NHRA series. And then in 2007, I did the NHRA and NMCA series. So.
Did it get you so excited that you started, getting more into it, more into the performance side?
I grew up. I'm the oldest of 3 children, and I grew up when my dad was really starting his career in drag racing. So that's what these 2 cars represent here. These are actual original Gap and Roush Mustangs that we've restored. I was the track rat. I was running around, with a bunch of the other kids, in and out of the pits. Coming back around, when I first got my license, I did a lot of street racing here in the area, but never drag racing, on a track. When I started drag racing, I wanted to challenge myself. One of the things that I find important about being the curator of the museum is that I need to speak knowledgeably about the different types of competition here, represented here, the basics, engine basics. I'm not an engineer, but I've grown up all my life with it. So I did my first engine build. I built my first engine in around 2000. It went into that green Cougar that's out there.
Yeah.
And when we started drag racing, my husband started also that same year. So he actually drove the Cougar the first year with the engine that I built. So what drag racing offered me was a way to understand the competition and also understand where my father's passion is, and that's in the engines, engine building.
Once you got more into that, did it help you connect with him better? Or a conversational level or understanding?
Yeah, sort of.
I don't know, maybe understanding his mindset, or I don't know, what gets him fired up or something like that.
No, I always knew. I always knew. Of the 3 kids, my brother works for the company too. My sister, she actually has her own business and she lives over in France. So she's not really connected to the business here in any way. But my brother and I have been involved in the company. He's 9 years younger than I am. So when he was younger, Dad had moved on from the drag racing and was road racing. So whereas I got involved in the drag racing as a point of reference, here in the museum, my brother actually road raced, and we have 2 of his road race cars here in the museum also.
It's interesting how the things you're kind of exposed to as a little kid, they imprint on you.
It's when you're most impressionable,
yeah.
And there's a bit of nostalgia to it, because I remember, being at the track in the 70s, when all those big names were,
That was the prime time of drag racing.
It really was. It really was. The car the car that's behind you here, we've not had it on the track yet, but there's 2 Cougars out there that have been restored, and I had 4 or 5 different cars that we used parts of to restore those 2 cars. This car, I took one of the parts cars to a chassis guy in Bowling Green, Ohio, Steve Matukis, and he took the parts car and made a drag car out of it.
That's awesome.
So, also the body finish and paint work was all done by Technosports here in Livonia.
So did you do like father-daughter, you know, work in the shop together? Did he?
No, not really.
He didn't step you through your first engine build?
No, no. Dad's pretty intense. I mean, you know, a lot of people will ask me, well, what's it like, you know, having Jack Roush as your father? And to me, he's, you know, I mean, he's just Dad. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we fight like fathers and daughters often do. But he's pretty intense, very, very competitively driven. I stayed away from competition for a long time because there was just so much pressure there. So in terms of what I've learned, you know, I've worked with people around the shop. I understood a lot of the terms, a lot of the ideas, a lot of the technical aspects, but I never had any hands-on experience. All of that, you know, the before I built the first engine, you know, a lot of that I did get from just listening in. You know, conversations Dad had with people, you know. Once I felt the need to be able to talk about this in more detail, then I found people around the shop that would, you know, help me.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, building your own engine is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and actually, I've assembled 2 engines for this car with a friend of mine, another fellow racer, Kurt Neighbor, and the engine that will go in this car is a 427 Cammer. Yeah. We've already had it on the dyno with a single plane intake manifold and 2 750 quick fuel carburetors, and it made 850 horsepower.
Wow. That's going to be one of the hardest engines you could build too. With the
It is very complicated. They are not easy. So, you know, we'll get that engine. Like I said, I've got 2. And we'll use them, we'll swap them out as we need to, because, you know, they are a little finicky. So I do expect it not to go entirely smoothly, but, you know, I can always have my fingers crossed. Oh yes, thank you. It's a busy week for us. We've been running and running.
What draws you to Cougars over a Mustang?
Because I just wanted to be different. I mean, you know, when I was little and at the drag strip, you know, back in the 70s, you know, they were running Cougars too. You know, people were racing Cougars with Mustangs. Not as many, for sure, but, you know, you'd see them at the track as well. Like I said, I just kind of like being different.
Which car of your dad's was the one that you spent the most time around at the track when you were little?
Probably the car that we are building a tribute car today. We don't have the original car. As a matter of fact, it's my understanding it doesn't exist at all. It was wrecked in a pit accident, and I have a letter from the junkyard that had the car and ended up cutting it up. But that was the Tijuana Taxi, the 4-door Maverick.
Oh, okay. I've seen pictures of that one.
Yeah. This was the second car that I raced on a regular basis. It's a 2001 New Edge Mustang, and it started life as a pre-production calibration car. So, you know, it was one of those vehicles that would have eventually been destroyed because it could never be titled or driven on the road. So once it had reached the end of its life, we acquired it from Ford and turned it into a race car, gave it a second life. Steve, we have some filming going on. This is my crew chief, Steve Fackinen. Steve and I have been racing together since 1997. Yep. So we've been working together for a long time. So at one point we thought we would build a car to go NHRA Superstock racing, but then I got the idea, again, doing something a little different. Our company has a division called Clean Tech, and we manufacture conversion kits to propane, from gasoline to propane, for fleet vehicles like Bluebird Bus, UPS, Frito-Lay Delivery, among other customers. So I took that technology and we applied it to a Ford Coyote, 5-liter Coyote, and continued racing in the NMRA and NMCA series. I run in modular muscle in NMRA and open comp in NMCA. But this engine, where it sits, I've got 2 injectors per port. It's liquid propane, so it's more modern technology than where people have raced with propane in the past. Like there have been propane drag cars from the 70s, but those were all vapor-based systems. So this is modern technology to a fuel that's been around for a very long time. On the dynamometer, this engine has made just a tick over 1,000 horsepower.
Wow, those are big injectors.
If I could get a 3rd injector per port, we could make over 1,000. However, there's not enough real estate there. Just not enough room.
Is this a kit that would be potentially sold to the public?
No, I utilize the technology, but it is a handmade, one-of-a-kind system.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Now, there are a few components, like the injectors that you see that we use. Those are made by a company called Biphase, and Biphase is owned by Schwann's, or at least they were. I think they may have been sold off recently, but like Schwann's delivery trucks, like
Really?
ice cream.
That's surprising.
So, since they are a production type injector, we really needed to get more fuel. That's how we ended up with 2 injectors per cylinder instead of 1, because we needed more fuel.
Is there some kind of pump, or does it just rely off of tank pressure?
No, the pump is actually in the tank. And it's 50 PSI. The rails are 50 PSI above tank pressure.
It's interesting. So it's not super different than a normal fuel system in that sense. Where do you get liquid propane?
We have a tank back here that we have feral gas come and fill. And so we'll fill up our rigs before we leave for the race. And when we're out competing, if our refueling rigs run low, there's a number of places that we can get propane from. Flying J, U-Haul, some gas stations. You can even have, sometimes the trucks will have a bobtail come out to fill their vendor propane tank.
I have that sometimes.
So.
Must be a good jack. All the good ones are loud.
The very, very first race that we ran while we were testing, before we ran competition, we were testing this car the very first time with the new system in it. And we had run low on fuel, needed to refill our fueling rigs. And the Heritage had come out to fill the vendor there at the track. So Steve flags him down and says, "Hey, can you fill our tanks?" So I was literally running. I was competing on the same fuel that they were cooking hot dogs and hamburgers with.
That's awesome. Were they shocked when you were asking to fill up?
Pleasantly surprised. Yeah.
I can imagine.
Don't see that too often. Not every day. Yeah, not every day. So we'll start it up for you.
Oh yeah. Remember when before we went to Johnny Benson's and I saw that school bus that said Roush on it?
Yeah.
That's what that was. Yeah. A few weeks ago, we actually saw a school bus in Grand Rapids that had the Roush Clean Tech badge on it. And I'm like, what is that for?
Yeah.
Now we know.
Now you know.
The school bus don't sound like that.
It'd be cooler if it did.
Now, actually, this year, Clean Tech has asked us to bring the vehicle to a couple of the trade shows. you know, the propane-oriented trade shows. So we've been to a trade show in Charlotte and Jekyll Island, Georgia, with the car, displaying it with Bluebird Bus. Yeah, this is the car that I built the engine for, that my husband raced, the first year we raced.
What was there something wrong with the engine that was in it before, or did you just want to make it faster, or are you trying to fix it? Like...
Well, it was just a plain Jane 302, and I had acquired a Mercury Marauder 410. It was really just a boat anchor. It was something. It was a piece of junk sitting in somebody's yard, and I got my hands on it, and we tore it all apart. I mean, I was covered from head to toe with grease, taking that engine apart. We actually, one of the cylinders had seized. One of the pistons had seized in the cylinder, and we actually took a 2x4 and a sledgehammer and pounded out. But rebuilt that engine with 428 Cobra Jet parts and Cobra Jet heads. So mostly just factory parts, you know, but performance factory parts. And in the end, on dyno, it made 425 horsepower, 425 foot-pounds of torque. Much of what we've done, as Tyler said, there's a very personal connection. Now, there's a few in here, you know, like that Boss 429. He bought that back in '75. It had been a drag car. Well, you probably have a little more detail on that from some of the recordings that you've done.
Yeah. The backstory is when he saw it was for sale on in front of a gas station down in Telegraph, just down the road, and the engine was out of the car. I think one of the fenders was off of the car.
Yeah, it was tweaked. It had been wrecked.
Yeah.
I know that because I was restoring a car out at Ed Nowakowski's house, and he had the car straightening out the frame. But yeah, the fellow who had it for sale had raced it.
Yeah.
And
I think the original owner had actually passed away. It was a gentleman who was probably only in his 40s or 50s who had passed away and given it to his
son.
Like 18-year-old son.
Yeah.
Is that the red one back there?
Yeah, the red one.
Yeah, the 429.
Let's look at that.
Now, the Boss 429s were modified by a company called CarCraft. So every Boss 429 had a serial number, a KK number. And so Dad, when he went to restore the car, he was trying to figure out what its serial number was, you know, in line of production from CarCraft. And the only thing he could come up with was 429. This is car 429.
Wow. And he didn't know that when he bought it?
No. Nope.
Car for sale on the side of the road? These things are wild.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't he buy it for $1,300?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So in 1975, he bought this car for $1,300.
Jeez. That's...
There's no room in the engine bay.
It's funny, too, because I think this is the only car he's ever asked me what I think it's worth.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it may be, as far as the vintage muscle era cars, this is probably the most valuable one that we have in the collection. And the next most valuable car may be the Black Cougar up there.
What do they do in the old Gap and Roush building now?
What's that?
In the old Gap and Roush shop that's over in the...
Yeah, he was asking about that yesterday. I don't know who's up there now.
I don't know. When my father and Gap split, Gap kept the original shop, and my dad acquired a new building. So I'm not really sure if Gap still owns that building or not. And that picture of, that's actually me, and it's one of the few pictures that exist with one of my dad's race cars. Why don't you tell them the story of the fender?
So we've found Facebook has been a tremendous resource in terms of trying to pull some of these old Pro Stockers back together. And there's a fairly active nostalgia Pro Stock group on there with, I think last I looked, like 9,000 members in it. And we were seeking photos of a couple of different cars, but that second 73 Pinto is actually the one that Jack drove. Somebody posted a photo of that car, and when, you know, conversation kicks up, and I commented on it, and some guy replies to it like, my brother and I were actually at that race in St. Louis, and after the race was over, we went down to the weeds at the end of the track and grabbed a fender, and it's been in my brother's barn for the last 40 years. Would you guys like to have it back?
Yeah, that was the drag car that my dad wrecked.
Jack was not their primary driver by any means. He tended to do more like match racing and that sort of stuff, exhibition events. The story he tells there, that car was actually wrecked at Gateway, and it was a 4th of July weekend. And because the hospital was so full, he ended up actually in the mental ward because it was the only free bed they had.
Is there anything in particular you're looking for that you have not found yet that maybe somebody watching this video could have sitting in their barn?
Oh man.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Is there anything we need that we don't have?
I don't know. The question might be, what do we don't know we need that we don't have? There's always something, you know. There's always some surprise, you know, some new story somebody has to tell, you know, something that, you know, we didn't realize before that makes other things, other pieces of the drag race story fit together. So, actually, Tyler's been sitting down with my dad almost on a weekly basis for how long now?
Probably about a year and a half.
Yeah, about a year and a half, and just getting him to tell stories, you know, so that we can capture these memories.
That's what you got to do.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Do you ever like have a camera rolling so you don't forget some of this?
We record them. I think the eventual goals we're going to do maybe like a coffee table style book with a selection of photos and like short stories.
Yeah.
We've recorded one or two, but it kind of turns into, I don't know how to phrase it, but he puts on a little bit more of a performance than just kind of being relaxed and open. And
it's like an audio book, like it would be really cool from his perspective.
The best way to do it is to get him to sit down with somebody, particularly somebody that he either doesn't know or hasn't seen in a long time, and to get him to tell stories. That's when he is most animated, you know, and it's very spontaneous and often embellished.
I find too, not putting a camera in his face, he sort of forgets the recorder is there after a little while, and he's maybe a little more open and introspective than he would be otherwise. Because he's been in the public sphere for a very long time, so he's a very polished kind of delivery, you know, very PR friendly.
You gotta be a little guarded when you have people coming for you.
Yeah.
Understandable.
But yeah, that's kind of the end of the line in terms of the early drag racing there.
Yeah.
That partnership fell apart in '76. There was kind of a difference of opinion in the direction of the company. I usually say Wayne was kind of a driver, a racer at heart, and his feeling was that as long as they were winning races and championships, that was enough to keep the lights on. Whereas Jack was really more of the crew chief, engine builder, business-minded, and he felt there needed to be the business behind the scenes to provide the capital to make a race team possible. And they butted heads for a couple of years, and I think they broke up 2 or 3 times before it finally stuck.
Yeah.
And then Jack ends up buying Wayne out of his share of the company and then taking off on his own.
I never knew how that actually worked.
Yeah.
There's so many sub-stories or eras of Jack that are like self-contained stories that to weave the whole thing together is a lot.
Yeah, but before you leave the building, you see that picture there with sudden death? That car is actually out in the floor in the Mustang room, and we have a board in front of it that tells the story in more detail. But that's a pretty cool story in terms of local street racing lore.
It's a 75 Mustang II Jack built for a street racer here locally named Joe Rugarello. Jack has always sort of insinuated that Mr. Rutarello may have had some mob ties. He registered the car in his mom's name, I think.
What's that?
Said I believe he registered the car in his mom's name, is the story I was told.
Which car?
Rutarello, sudden death.
Oh, Rugarello.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me, but.
But it was the original sleeper. They painted all the chrome bumpers kind of a drab gray and tried to disguise it a little bit. But it's a car a friend of ours had actually restored over a number of years, and eventually took the car to auction, and we ended up working out a little deal to.
Yeah, it didn't make reserve, so between Tyler and I, we continued conversation with the owner of the car, and we were able to purchase it after the auction. So.
Yeah, I think you've sent a couple times. That's probably your favorite photo of your dad there.
Yeah, I love that picture. It's not a very big picture, but it's very, very in character for him.
If anybody has an artifact or something sitting in their garage that they would want to notify you about, what would be the proper channel for someone to do that?
We have an email address and a main phone number on our website or our social media. Just tell us what you got and tell us to ask Tyler about it, I guess.
You never know what'll come up. So people have found some pretty wild things from these videos, so it's always cool.
I never cease to be surprised about what people hold on to.
Yeah, that picture that you see of my dad and the other fellow is my grandfather. Now, he was mechanically minded, but I wouldn't call him a mechanic necessarily. But he would come up they lived in Ohio, and he and my grandmother would come up and spend time up here. My grandfather actually, he was a welder, fabricator. He served in World War II. He was on one of the ships that sailed into Tokyo Harbor the day of the surrender. But he would come up and help Dad with various things around the shop. And he actually he built the first dyno.
Really?
So, yeah.
Wow. Was he into cars when your dad was growing up? Is that where he...
Oh, my grandfather?
Yeah.
No, my dad's uncle was really one of his biggest influences. Yeah. My Uncle Russell, my grandfather's brother, and forgive me, I can't tell you all the details right now, but Russell had 3 children, and one of his older sons ended up working as a crew member on a road race team, and I believe he moved to New Zealand. The team was based out of New Zealand. So my Uncle Russell was, he was the one that was kind of, mentoring my dad when it came to motorsports. I don't know what that was about.
That's not good.
Who knows?
Somebody's got a telephone bill somewhere. But...
Yeah, there's a quote over there that on the whiteboard. Yeah. That pretty much says it all.
They had a career planned out for me that wasn't the one I wanted. But the way Ford was structured back then was such that unless you had a engineering degree, which was far less common than it is these days, or you knew somebody, you were kind of on whatever career track they stuck you on. So he was stuck there. So despite his best efforts to get into engine development, he just kind of progresses and stalls out, and eventually leaves Ford in 1970.
So he left it to go do it himself, and then come back as an independent guy.
Yeah, he went to work for Dodge briefly. I believe Hamtramck. I think that was too long of a commute for him back in those days, as he's told me. Plus, he didn't find it as rewarding as he expected it to.
No, he didn't.
He taught at community college, starting part-time for a semester and then full-time for about 2 years.
What class?
Mathematics.
And then also like automotive type classes, drivetrain theory, transmissions, that sort of stuff. Was also apparently a fairly popular professor because he was bringing the drag cars into the auto shop. So,
this one.
As well as a class evaluation sheet from one of the deans of the college. But that didn't last either. Wayne Gap was another Ford engineer. Wayne had actually worked in Ford's motorsports division. He was one of the guys that helped develop the Boss 429 for NASCAR competition. And Wayne was operating his own funny car team at that point in time, with a Cougar funny car. Ford didn't have a lot of appetite for outside motorsports activities back in those days. They also didn't like moonlighting, so he basically received an ultimatum from his bosses at Ford that said, you know, either you got to give up your race team or you got to give up your job. And his solution of not doing either of those was to find somebody else to run his race team for him. And they had some mutual connections from their time at Ford, and somebody threw out Jack's name as somebody who was competent enough to make that happen for him. Of course, he eventually quit Ford about a year and a half after that too, and they decided to go pro stock racing full time.
See, I'm glad we came back here, because whenever Susan came up, I never saw this car.
Yeah,
I totally missed it. But this is wild.
Legendary, yeah. 10 liter.
10 liters.
604 cubic inch. They took a 429 block and just drilled the hell out of it. But the stated design goal on the Boss concept was that they wanted a car that they felt was as at home on the drag strip as it was on cruising up and down Wilbert Avenue. It's kind of a tribute to some of the illegal street racing that happened back in the day a little bit too.
You know, what a time to be alive whenever somebody could go to work every day and get paid to build this because somebody sat at a desk and was like, we should do this and it would be a good idea because whatever reason why it happened and it exists.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, this would be a really cool one to see on the street.
I've heard it run once. It doesn't run real well these days because it hasn't been started in probably 5 years at this point. But we kind of had to have that discussion on this one. Like, everything in there is custom made, and we blow up anything and we got nothing at that point. So,
is this like a SEMA display or something?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's from probably 2007-ish, I want to say. So they stopped using it at some point, but like so many things, they're like, well, that would look good in the museum, wouldn't it? And here it is. These are PPG pace cars, so this is a big deal. Back when PPG was a title sponsor for IRL, they had a team of pace cars where they have the different OEMs put together these highly conceptualized, not just Fords. There was a Viper, there was a Viper, there was a GMC pickup truck, there was a Ferrari, but that's supposed to be a Thunderbird.
Kind of looks like one
underneath there somewhere. But it was a space to show off their paint technologies too. So all these cars got these radical, entirely custom paint jobs. Jack said at the time these were all $1 million plus jobs.
Man.
And then there was like a open car hauler that hauled them all over the country, and they had a team of models that drove them around the track and greeted the VIPs and did little ride and drives. And that thing feels like it weighs about 5,000 pounds too. We had to move it earlier in the year, and it's like it was usually a lot of these we can push with like 2 or 3 people. That one was a struggle, and I asked one of my coworkers who worked on it back in the day. He's like, why is it so heavy? And he's like, well, it's probably like 25% Bondo.
I was just thinking, I wonder how much Bondo is in these things. Probably parked it under one of those and just got out there with the cheese grater. Let's sculpt the car today.
This is a pre-production concept for the Bullet. It was a kind of a Ford solicited bids for a special edition vehicle, and we put this together for them, and it did the auto show circuit before it ended up here.
This one's cool. It's the 25th anniversary Mustang that never was.
Yeah. The quote in there from Jack is great because the Ford called it irresponsible.
I think I've read about this car before.
Yeah. It's got a marine block in it at 351, and then they did this crazy custom manifold on there with the 2 little twin turbos hung off of it.
It looks like an airplane.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah.
Irresponsible.
Jack says you could spin the tires if you stood on it in 5th on the freeway. Like you could.
I believe it. It's a light car, hard tires. That probably is irresponsible.
Yeah.
For the average consumer, yeah.
If you watch this whole video, we appreciate you. That means you're interested in the same stuff that we are. And I would just like to pleasantly remind you to make sure you hit the thumbs up. Leave a thumbs up if you're on a TV. You can do it with your remote, I believe. And make sure you're subscribed. Subscribing doesn't cost anything. That just means when you open the YouTube app and we have a new video, it's gonna show you that video. Hopefully, that's not even always a guarantee, but it helps. If you haven't already seen it, we did a video with Mark Martin a few years ago at his museum in Arkansas. It's obviously more Roush cars that pertain to him and his direct stories with them. You go watch that if you haven't seen it yet. We've done one at the Wood Brothers. If you're new here, you're gonna like it. I'll say that much. And if you're not new here, please bring us somebody that is new here, like a friend, anybody you know, your dad, or somebody who may not be using YouTube. You can introduce them to this and help grow the space. That's ultimately what we want to do, is be a steward of motorsports and history, and making sure that people know what it used to be like. If people don't know what it used to be like, they won't be aware when those things disappear, and they won't ever know what they should have. And if you want to support the channel even more, you can go to staplesandautoworks.com, find the hat I'm wearing, t-shirts, things like that. We got all kinds of cool retro themed merchandise, stickers and whatnot for you to show your support publicly.